It was a Sweet Couture's bar.
Sweet Couture's bar. What's the name of that bar? And
well, anyway,
they were smoking that, and that owner of the bar, they called the cops. Somebody was smoking marijuana, and he caught up with my sister and my brother. They were smoking that ayut.
I've sometimes worried about that when I'm traveling and I have maybe sweetgrass, you know?
Yeah.
They don't know what that is, you know?
No, they don't.
think it's drugs or something.
Yeah.
You try to cross the borderline with all them, boy, they'll just go all through your belongings.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to fight for now. We've been having meetings here and there, and we want to see that the Indians are not supposed to be touched, because for their belief, there is no borderline for the Indians. Indians are just like birds. They come and go as they please. Because there's, see how many bands of Kootenays when they call them the Canadians. But we had mentioned in our big meeting here at Edwards Lake here a while back, different ones would get up and they said, there's no such thing as Canadian Indians and U.S. Indians. They're all alike. They were all related, and they'd go back and forth that far. And the Indians would go clear over to Yellowstone Park, all throughout the plains, and this other way. It was all theirs. They would just go. And that by the time some stayed here and some stayed there, and here come the line right there and cut them in half. And that's what makes them, that they say, this one man said, I'm not a Canadian, and I'm not an American. I'm just an Indian. That's what I am, I call myself. So he says, therefore, I should never be stopped. They shouldn't go search me and search for marijuana. I don't know what marijuana and drugs are.
He says, I'm not a Canadian, I'm not American, I'm a North American.
And so that's what we're fighting for now. And I don't know, they went so far saying that they're going to open it up for 24 hours. That is over here at Roosevelt. There's the borderline, that's where they're at. And all along, of course, the Canadian border goes right into New York throughout there. That's where my daughter and a bunch of them went for the big meeting here a while back. And they're getting around to that, you know, so they better quit searching Indians. They can for white people, boys. They've been transporting the drugs, the marijuanas too. That's what they look out for. But I doubt, I'm not going to say my Indian people are honest, but like us elders, and even though they should just not bother Indians at all, because as they say, we're like birds. We Indians and the animals were the first ones that made print in this America. So therefore, they should kind of look back into that and think that we were free to come and go as we please, come if we want. As he got to mentioning, we never ever got done paid for our country, our land, once it was taken away. They came across and they said, the bunch that came across went back over and says, let's go. We discovered a land over there, it's unclaimed. No one is there, no one claims it. And I think that's bad at that time. And everyone knows who the man was Columbus. And he took his people and they're over here, they're here. And the people think they own it. Now they're adopting the Chinese, they're adopting the Japanese, they're adopting just any race, any kind. Now, I was looking at paper, I was reading paper where how many Chinese that are U.S. citizens right today. But then who give them permission to do that? It's bad enough that they came and now they're starting taking them over. I always tell my grandchildren, you know, one day, I give you 20 more years. You're going to be living up in the mountains. They're going to press you off of this better lands, and if there's any of you left, you're going to be up in the mountains. That's where they're going to keep you. The way things are running, the way things are going here. Never once I look in the TV where Reagan is sitting over there. Never once do I ever see them praising Indians. Never once since he's been in there 2 terms now. Never once did I ever hear him praise the Indians. Let's praise them. They once owned this. Never. It's different races that he takes out in that picture. And only one that ever did this was Kennedy. I was in a hospital, sick, and I used to watch TV. And he's the only one that ever mentioned the Indians. And he made a big speech, and first thing he come out with, I'm going to try to help the Indians. And I'm going to look in the future and see if they're getting along. If not, I'm going to help them. Because I do believe that they were here at all the times before we came over. So therefore, we should be treating the Indians right, because we took their land. And the TV went off that way, you know. And that's the only one of all these past presidents that I've ever heard talked about Indians.
Maybe Jesse Jackson if he gets elected.
Yes. Yes, maybe. Because he was making all his trips in on the reservations.
That's
to
why he
make
doesn't have
speeches
no show to be elected.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Alec, I was wondering, you never got to finish that story, and could you start over at the beginning of it?
Okay, where I left off.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
maybe backtrack a little bit to.
Yeah, just go over it again.
Yeah, I was saying that that even the white people off the reservation at that time, they like Indians when they come to their place and graze their horses on their land, on their meadow. They're happy to see the Indians come back every fall. And it's the same way as we're treated here in this reservation as it is outside the reservation. Those people at that time, they like Indians. And their children, maybe they told their children how it was. They just moved in there and started living there and all that it belonged to Indians. But from there on, their grandchildren right now, they're all out there. And if I go in there to hunt in the fall and if I take one horse along, they'd make me pay for grazing my horse in their land or report it to the sheriff and I'd be arrested. That's how they're treating us now. at that time, just like their land was ours. We would do anything, move in there with our horses, and they never say anything. And when I was growing up, like I said, where I was born and raised, we'd travel around on horses and buggies. Sometime, maybe once a year, we'd come down to Elmo on a horse and buggy. Then I come to Elmo View, they call the place now Elmo View. Then look down to Elmo, then I'd be really happy to see my friends and my relatives. And I used to think it was far when we traveled to the next community of Indians. But now, like last week, we went to Morris Ferry and run back and forth to Spokane, and one day we made up our mind to come home. Took 3-4 hours to get back home, but that time, when I was growing up, we'd move to Morris Ferry, and it'd take about a week to get there, with horses and buggies.
Would you go there every year?
Where?
To Bonners Ferry?
No. I didn't know Bonners Ferry till I was way old. And when I was a kid, I never used to. I hear about Bonners Ferry, but the older people travels back and forth. But us, you know, like I say, my father was crippled and my mother was. Well, we don't go that far. Like I said, from Nevada to Alma was quite a ways. It would take all day to get to come to Elmo. And the older people would travel back and forth to Bonners Ferry and up into Canada. Like Adeline was saying, at that time, they were all mixed. The Canadians and these people here, they just, some would go over there and live there, some of those people would come here and live here. And right now, I have relatives over in Canada, each reserve there. I have relatives there, and in Creston, I have relatives there, and in Bonners Ferry. Like she said, we're all related. We're all in one. We still are all in one. And they try to say that some were Canadians, some were Americans. That's about all I have to say.
Roy, I'm getting a little bit of feedback in the microphones. I don't know what it's from. Maybe you could listen, tell me if it's tribe.
Yeah. Yeah, he's right. We used to all do that, you know. We visit here and there. I had an uncle living in Polson. His name was Antoine Pierre. He had his allotment there, right where Beaver Slide is, and within about 1.5 miles up, so down south, we would say southwest. And then I knew myself when I used to live there. And then one year we wintered there after he passed away, and his widow wants all of us kids to be there with her. And we lived there all through the winter. And we went to school that year. And it's about 2 miles down to Sunny Slope School in Polson. And we used to walk every morning about like 7 o'clock. She'd get out of bed and cook us breakfast, get us ready. We'd pack up our little lunch, whatever we would have. Then we would walk. There was me and my cousin Mary, Pierre Gingras, and Isaac Pierre. He's a deceased. He's been dead for several years. I can remember that. That's why I always say, these children's, you're not, when they used to go to the school stop down there in town, before this new road here. You can't take them down in the car. They will not go to school. They'll miss school. But then, that's when I was saying, I said, everything has changed so much in the olden days and up till today, the way kids are, you know.
Do you remember when you saw your first car?
My first car, well, I was already about like 12, 13 when I started seeing cars go around that the Indians were driving. And I believe they used to call it Model T. That was the brass head Model T. Show him your key for Model T. He's still got a key for the
This
Model T.
is a Model T key.
Yeah, see it?
They have all the same kind of key in 1923 and 1924 and 25. All the same kind of key. If you have one, you can start anybody's car.
Yes, and he still got the key, the first car make.
In
Is that your first?
1925, it was the last made of this year. 1926, they have this kind of key. They started having this kind of key, and nobody could steal anybody else's car. But them days, they all have this kind of key.
Did you ever drive away in the wrong car?
Yeah. And when I first rode in the car, it was the cannabis top Model T. They call it copperhead, you know, ready there. It was all copper. And I think it was a 1922 car. And we was out camping up towards Browns Meadow. We were camping there, and something went wrong with the car and no mechanic around to fix it. So when I was moving back home, the car wouldn't start. And then this one guy was pulling this Model T, you know, just a little car. And they had a rope hooked onto the Model T, and they had a rope around the saddle horn, and it was pulling, it was a saddle horse. And that's when I and my brother, they told us to get in that car, and that was my first ride in that car. And the horse was pulling it. I was happy jumping around there riding in the automobile.
And then again, that Model T, you know, it didn't have no power at all. You'd go along, family'd be in it, and you'd go along, and wherever there's a little hill, like, they'd just go like halfway up, and they would just give up. It wouldn't go, can't even get on top. Then it'd have to roll down or somehow. Or a bunch of guys would get up and they'd help the car to get on top. They'd pull, you know, get it on top. Then some wise guy one day, he knew what to do. The reverse was stronger than the he turned that car and he went on the top of the hill on a reverse. And then many guys knew that, and that's how they used to do. Go, and if there's hills so steep, they go on the reverse and get on top.
Because them cars had no fuel pump, and the gas tank was under the seat. And then when it goes uphill, the gas quits flowing into the carburetor. That's how it gets stuck. Yeah. Then they turn around, back it out, so the gas would flow into the carburetor. And in 1926, they built the tank on the dash, you know, under the dash. That's where the tank is. So it will just, you know, flow right into the carburetor, and then that car would go any place.
Yeah.
It's starting to beep.
Beep, beep, beep.
When you're telling funny stories, I can't laugh because then they'll show up on the microphone.
Oh, really?
That's why I laugh now.
Well, we got about a minute. Let me ask, you were talking about Eneas farming, chief.
Yes.
The chief farming up here. When did the Kootenays stop farming in this area that you can remember?
Well, they did all along. They farmed all along.
Like she was saying, her uncle lives in Poston. He used to farm and sell the
every
wheat
year
or
he'd
whatever.
farm. There was quite a few that would do all that, you know. And of course, some had lands, but the lands that they owned wasn't no farming land, and then they couldn't do it, and quite a few. But my grandmother used to tell me that was her father, that big knife. This is what she used to tell me. That's